but that we must find a new way to think the relationship between truth and negativity. So, I return to the point concerning Lacan and philosophy. The same question is what is a thinkable relation between truth and the void, between truth and negativity? And I think from a long time that the entire problem is that of the localization of the void. The difficulty of the pure Hegelian negativity is that negativity is everywhere. Negativity is a sort of general principle of all becoming. And so we can say something like that. Negativity is, in the extraordinary work of Hegel, is a metaphysical category, something like that. Yeah, a category which has a sort of ubiquity, a category which is the tool for all explanations of different becomings. So today, if we are in dialectical thinking, we must localize the void or the negativity without use of too general vision of the creative possibility of negation. Philosophy and Lacan agree that truth is separation and not adequation. That the real is irreducible, or, as Lacan says, unsymbolizable. Actually, if the real is unsymbolizable, it lay in a separation to the symbolic order and to the truth. Philosophy and psychoanalysis agree that truth is different from knowledge, and that finally there is only truth under condition of the void of the separation itself. So one could suppose that all theory proposes a localization of the void which authorizes truth. It's a key for explanation of different philosophical orientations. Different philosophical orientations today are generally different localization of negativity, or different localization of the void, or possible. One possible localization of the void is to say that there is no void at all. It's a purely negative localization. There is no place for the void. But it's one possibility, but there is many different possibilities to localize the void, and the different possibility to place the void, and making an algebra and a topology of the negativity. I give two completely different examples. For Heidegger, the void is thought as a figure of the open. And it's poetry which destines language to the open. The open is liberation from the violent technical will which fills and destroys our earth. So, one can say that in the contemporary situation, the void, so the separation in regard to the violence, the technical violence, is localized in the language as a poetic language. And it's a very precise, it's a very precise localization. And if we take, on the other side, the work of Althusser, we find two different theories of the void. First, a structure, a materialist structure, only functions under the condition of an empty place, is the structural localization of the void. And Lacan finally sees in this idea that being thinks the fundamental axiom of all philosophy. So for Lacan, at the very definition of philosophy is precisely that philosophy localizes the void in being, and so introduce the idea, the false idea, that being thinks, without any effect of the desire of the subject, outside the question of the desire of the subject. I quote in the same seminar, I quote Lacan, that being is supposed to think. This is what founds the philosophical tradition from Parmenides. So all the philosophical tradition is founded on the idea that being is supposed to think. And for Lacan, this axiom is unacceptable. Thought must be an effect of the subject, and not a supposition concerning being. So it seems that conflict is inevitable at this point, that we have really between psychoanalysis in its Lacanian sense and philosophy in its Lacanian sense too, an inevitable conflict. Alors, you know, this conflict concerns the triangle, the three terms, subject, truth, and real. And what Lacan says is that the disposition of this triangle, subject, truth, real, is different in philosophy and in psychoanalysis. In one sense, you can say that in philosophy, through the localization of the void has a negative consequence for Lacan, that is, finally, that the separation between truth and the real is absorbed in being. And it is why ontology is the question. Because the conviction of Lacan is that ontology is something properly of philosophical nature, and which is an impossibility, which is a false localization of the void from the very beginning. Now, this must be examined in detail, and I cannot give immediately all the details, but I will depart from two of Lacan's statements to examine something like contradiction in the final judgment of Lacan himself. Naturally, I am on the side of philosophy in this affair. You understand that. So, the question is clear. Is really two questions. First, is it true that the localization of the void on the side of being qua being, that is an ontological localization of the void, has as consequences, among its consequences, that being thinks. And second question is the position of Lacan, that is the localization of the void in the subject, a consistent position. Because the localization of the void in a subject is also a philosophical tradition. And for example, it's exactly the position of Sartre in Being and Nothingness. The identification of the subject to the effect of nothingness is precisely the fundamental position of Sartre. So there is something unclear, for the moment, there is something unclear in the strong opposition between psychoanalysis and philosophy on the sole basis of the localization of the void in the being qua being or in the subject. Because there is, by necessity, something like a new question concerning the ontological status of the subject itself. And it's a question that cannot be escamoted, that cannot be suppressed in the disposition of Lacan. For example, in 1973, Lacan writes or says, to this seminar, the ideal of psychoanalysis, so it's a definition of psychoanalysis, definition of the goal of psychoanalysis. The ideal of psychoanalysis is that on the basis of its experience, a knowledge of the truth can be constituted. On the basis of its experience, of the psychoanalytic experience, a knowledge of the truth can be constituted. And the same year, Lacan says that the core of his teaching of Lacan, the core of his teaching is that there is a relation of being that cannot be known, or on what cannot be demonstrated, something true, however, can be said. So, psychoanalysis is, on the one hand, a knowledge of the truth, okay? And on the other hand, a relation of being, so something of ontological nature, a relation to being, that cannot be known.